Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've recorded meetings and conventions here in Southern California since 1998. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994, and I got sober in a small town called Santa Maria. I moved to Los Angeles when I had 5 years sober and started recording meetings shortly after I got here. In 2013, I started recording conventions. So please enjoy the channel. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Just click right down there. Thank you.
Now our main speaker will share his experience, strength and hope. Please join me in welcoming Cubby from West Hollywood.
Good evening. My name is Cubby Selby. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm delighted to be here. I love speaking at AA meetings. I'm absolutely fascinated by this whole process and what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. So say I'm an alcoholic, but I'm an alcoholic that never drank in high school and I never drank in college. I'm an alcoholic that never went to high school and I never went to college. And I learned how to drink the way the rest of you mental giants did. In a word, unsuccessfully. Although, of course, that really isn't true. I mean, drinking kept us alive long enough to kill us and get us here, so maybe it wasn't unsuccessful. But I lost my first job due to drinking at the age of 15, and of course, over any considerable period, it got worse. It's just it's the way it is. Now, I've come to believe, from looking very carefully at the first couple of pages of Chapter 5, and examining my experience through the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, that what we call life is extraordinarily simple. That it's simply a series of decisions, actions, and results. I've also come to believe that somehow I made a decision to be unaware of my decisions. Therefore, everything that has happened to me in life, I'm not responsible for. You know, I'm a victim of circumstances. And I believed it so thoroughly that I had a shrink once tell me that I'm unlucky. There's 5 years of justified drinking in that remark. I love that man. Anyway, I never had any way of understanding what I was experiencing. And to this very moment, I never know what is happening at the moment. It's only in retrospect that I have any idea of what it is I have already experienced. So I never knew that all my life I was consumed with feelings. I didn't know what they were. I couldn't define them in any way, but I was just consumed by all these feelings. But one thing I knew is that they were wrong, that you should not have the feelings I had, especially the accompanying thoughts, and that there was something really wrong with me. So I had to hide these feelings under an all-consuming rage, and I went through life like a scream, looking for a mouth. I was a very intense young person. As a matter of fact, there were a few times when I was a kid where I blacked out before the first drink. My need was intense, I tell you that. I was born with an alcohol deficiency. That's my problem. I did everything I could to make up for that deficiency, I tell you. But I never knew that I was always overwhelmed with a sense of fear and inadequacy and shame and guilt, and that I knew I couldn't make it in this world and I couldn't live in my own skin, and there was something so morally defective and evil about me I didn't deserve to live. I had no idea that that's what I was feeling. But the worst of all was feeling separated from myself. Now, that is absolutely unbearable. Absolutely unbearable. I can't stand it, but of course I have no way of knowing what it is I'm experiencing. If you had a particular feeling all your life, there is no way you can understand it, relate to it, and or identify it until something changes that feeling. We live in a world of duality, so I have to have that change with which to compare what I've experienced my entire life. And that's what booze did. yuck. It's obviously, I love alcohol. For me, it's not a coincidence that the word spirit means God and it means booze. Because obviously, alcohol had to do a whole lot for me in order for me to be willing to let it do so much to me. And ultimately, it destroyed everything that I held of value. Basically, what it did is I did not do all the loving, kind things I always wanted to do, and I did all the rotten, mean-spirited things I knew no human being should ever do. But before that, it was a wonder. It was a spiritual experience. Drinking just... Oh, when I drank, man... And the angels sing. I mean, just thinking about a drink. Oh, Jesus. God, it's warm all over, man. It's Christmas. New Year's. It's Bugs Bunny Day. I mean, whatever. God. So great. The grand illusion took over when I drank. And I became a holy man. I became one whole, solid, unified being. And I had a sense of peace that I never knew existed. And all these feelings, this torture and this torment that consumed me all my life, awake or asleep, it either seemed to disappear or I could shine it on. Mangu magab, who cares? Oh, what a one. Then there's some clown. Now, every gin mill has a clown like this. Hey, man, you shouldn't drink. You know what you did last night? Hey, not a word. The hell do I want to know what I did last night? I come in here to believe all these lies, and now you want to put the truth in my face. Get thee behind me, Satan, you dumb bastard. Now, of course, eventually a lot of people tell you what you did. You know, people just can't stand away. Anyway, I must admit that my drinking may be a problem for you. But, man, it's the answer for everything for me. Now, it's true that I drink, I black out, and I become extraordinarily homicidal. So I go into the gin mill, I take a drink, and I might kill you. Hey, that's the chance I got to take, man. You know. Believe me, I'm willing to take that chance. Another Yahoo, more or less, what's the big deal? I mean, you're going to go belly up someday anyway. It's just not all that important, you know. Don't you understand? I have troubles. I'll take any chance in order to experience that sense of unity and peace. I'll do anything for that. So I can't accept that I'm powerless over alcohol. And I left home at 15. I went to sea. I was a merchant seaman during the Second War. And by the time I was 18, I was in a hospital in Germany. And they said I couldn't live more than 2 months. I had TB, and both my lungs were destroyed. I literally didn't have any lungs. Yet a couple of weeks before this particular day, while going through the canal in Antwerp, I jumped off the ship. I ran to a wine shop. I got all the wine I could carry, and I ran back to the ship. Now, it wasn't a great distance, and I didn't think anything of it at the time, but today there's a certain significance in the fact that I ran that distance without any lungs. I've come to believe that an non-alcoholic wouldn't do that. They wouldn't run an eighth of a mile to get 4 or 5 bottles of wine if they didn't have any lungs. But you see, they don't understand singleness of purpose in the same manner that I do. Yeah. I know what's important, and that was important. But I couldn't see where it indicated I have an abnormal relationship with alcohol, because I had to do everything I could to defend my right to drink. And I couldn't see that my life had become unmanageable, because if I accepted that, I'd have to look at why, and my drinking would be threatened. And I couldn't afford that. I had to defend my right to drink at all costs. Yet by the time I was 22 years old, I had spent more than 3 years in bed. It was about 3.5 years in the hospital. I had 10 ribs cut out, and I had 1 lung collapsed, a piece of the other lung cut out. And they used an experimental drug to keep me alive. And it impaired my vision and my hearing. My inner ear was almost totally destroyed. I couldn't walk properly. I'd fall down in the dark. All my muscles were petrified from this drug. And it fried my brain. It just literally fried it. Steamed it right up. And I also got hepatitis C in the blood transfusions. And then things started to get bad. That's a guarantee we have as drunks, man. I don't care how bad things are. Drinking is going to make them worse. You cannot stop and or prevent the progression of alcoholism. Just keeps getting worse and worse, one day at a time. But I don't understand any of these things at the time. All I know is I must defend my right to drink. Now, I've always known in my innermost self I can't drink. So in order to keep that information away from my awareness, I had to develop a belief system of lies. I had to teach myself what is true is false and what is false is true. The basic lie being that alcohol is the answer, not the problem. And one of the things I did to protect my right to drink was use heroin. And I devised a heroin sobriety maintenance program for myself. And that proved conclusively to me that I am not an alcoholic. Because you can't possibly be an alcoholic if you're shooting $100 a day worth of stuff and only getting drunk once or twice a month or whenever necessary. So from that point of view, it worked perfectly. However, this program of mine got a little expensive and rather habitual. Now, the second step implies that we're nuts. And so what I did is I left New York and I moved to Hollywood to get away from drugs. And it worked because I am really sincere. I mean, look at my eyes. You can tell I'm sincere. And that's why my sincerity just eked all over the place. But what happened was, to make a long story short, I got busted. They strapped me down in solitary and I kicked my habit. You know, which is really the no-frills approach to doing things like this. But it didn't cost me 20 grand either. It was for free. However, I did have a 2-year follow-up. The judge said, keep coming back, man. So anyway, after a week, they asked me if I wanted to come out of that cell. I said no. I can't tell you how safe I felt in there. By this time, I was really tired of running the streets. I don't run them. I walk very slowly, but just a figure of speech, you understand. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I couldn't deny that somehow I was doing me in. I could not associate any of my problems with my drinking, but I couldn't deny that I was doing something that was creating absolute chaos in my life. And I knew I couldn't do anything to me locked in that cell. So I stayed there, and after months they kicked me out. They put me with population for a month. Then somebody bailed me out, put me in a hospital for a month. And then suddenly I was back out on the streets in that same world I've never understood, the same world that has always intimidated me. Only this time I hadn't had a drink for 90 days. 90 long, endless days. Oh, my God. And I can no longer really believe in the belligerence and hostility that I always generated to hide my fear from you and from me. And I was so terrified I couldn't go across the street. I couldn't get through an intersection unless I was going for a drink. It was the only thing that would get me across the street. That went on for 15 months, and the woman I was living with brought another woman home with 3 kids because they had no place to live. And so we moved them in, and this fellow used to come and visit this woman. And one Friday night he came and he visited with me. Now, as I've said, I'm a blackout drinker, so I don't remember more than a total, perhaps, of 30 seconds from the entire evening, and I think he was there all night. But I do remember him coming in the room and sitting down. And the next thing I remember, he got up and he walked over to me and he dropped a book in my lap. And he said, "I'm tired. You read to me." So I guess from that remark, that he had been reading to me, but I have no direct memory of that. I remember taking that book, putting it on the table, opening it up, and that's the last thing I remember. But it turned out that I read from the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Obviously, I didn't read the entire text. See, you know, those last 5 or 6 years of drinking, man, we take sudden naps. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. We seem to disappear. You know, we're sitting there or laying, whatever it is we're doing. We just seem to disappear. And so I obviously didn't read all 164 pages. But evidently, I read enough to identify with the problem and to recognize the answer. And obviously, you can't recognize an answer until you have identified the problem. Because he took me to a meeting the following night, and I've been sober ever since. And that was the 29th of March, 1969. And a couple of things happened in the next few hours that forced me to believe that miracles are possible without my consent. Boy, what a great thing to know, man. Oh. Because if such were not the case, if I had to consent to the miracle, given the nature of my alcoholic personality, I would forever be at the airport waiting for my ship to come in, getting very, very salty, man, when I don't get my way. I would never accept that miracle. Never. But I don't have to. However, I have come to believe that at some point I must make a decision to cooperate with that miracle and to take the necessary actions if I want to experience it for the rest of my life. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, I must do that if I want to experience this for the rest of my life. So this guy takes me to this meeting. I hate everything about this meeting. There are hundreds of people there, all with 75 teeth in their mouth. They look like they've been polished. And the things I heard them say, it's embarrassing. Grown people, the things they were saying, oh my God. And the things they laugh at. I mean, Jesus, I know drunks are hysterics. We are all absolute hysterics. So much so that we don't even recognize it. You know what I mean? We think it's feeling good, you know. Especially when we're new in those first few years. How you doing, man? Oh, I'm doing great, man. That's what we call feeling good. Give me 6 more cups of coffee. Oh, I'm right on it. Got it. Oh, I love God. Anyway, there were thousands of them there that night. And there was only one thing I knew at that meeting, and I knew with absolute certainty that I am not an alcoholic. Yet I was given a gift of sobriety that night. The obsession to drink was removed, and I have not had a drink since that night. I've been absolutely sober since that night. This guy takes me home, and I hear myself say, can I go to another meeting? And when I said that, I took the second step. Remember, I only know this in retrospect. But you see, I come to realize that I did not say that. I had no plan on saying that. And I realized that I didn't say that, but there's more to what I thought was Cubby at that moment. At that moment in my life, I thought Cubby consisted of this body, the mind, and all those hideous and heinous thoughts that went through the mind. I believed that those thoughts defined me. So naturally, I not only loathed and despised myself, but I was absolutely terrified of myself, because I've lived, shall we say, a rather violent existence. So I was terrified of me, but there is so much more to me than that. There is, at the very least, an inner spirit. And that inner spirit recognized a power in that room that could restore me to sanity. And it spoke those words through me. And when I said that, I took the second step. Now, I got up the next morning and I started my day in the usual way. I started a fight with this woman I was living with. in order to justify storming out of the house and getting drunk. See, I've always known in my innermost self I can't drink. So I have to drink at something. I usually drank at people, but I would drink at anything. I'd drink at the weather, traffic lights, earthworms. It didn't make any difference. As long as I could feel justified in my heart of hearts in doing what I knew I had no business doing. So I started a fire. I went storming out of the house, and I was standing on the corner waiting to cross the street, and that same voice that's been screaming in my head my entire life was screaming that morning. But on the basis of that one AA meeting that I loathed, despised, and hated, and knew I was not an alcoholic, on the basis of that, 2 words in the litany were changed. It said, I'll show her. I won't drink. I'll stay sober. And my body turned around and went back to the house. And that morning, the second step took me. I was restored to sanity. Now, I have been mad as a hatter most of my sobriety. I use that word deliberately. Mad as a hatter. But I've been totally and absolutely sane with respect to alcohol since that moment. And how I define sanity is very simple. I could no longer believe the lies necessary to believe in order to justify taking the first drink. I could no longer believe that drinking would improve the quality of my life in any way. I have been totally and absolutely sane with respect to alcohol since that moment. Now, I don't limit the sanity available to just that. However, if you're alcoholic, without that foundation of sanity, no other form and or degree of sanity is possible. But with that foundation, every form and degree of sanity is absolutely infinite. So my body turns around, goes back to the house, and I sit there. I go to meetings, and I sit in the house, living on APCs and coffee. And after 30 days, I am stark raving sober. As we all know, there is only one thing worse than drinking, and that's not drinking. I mean, why else would we be here 8 o'clock Saturday night? We're all in the Church of the Martyrs? Hey, how about you? Wait, come on, man. That's madness. And the book tells us that in so many different ways. The bottle is only a symbol. We have a living problem. I have to learn to live without booze. And, is that at best arduous? There's no relief. You see, when I'm drinking, at least I pass out upon occasion. And I get a break and you get a break. But sober, I impose myself on you all the time. You know, it's dreadful. Now, again, see, I don't understand these things at the time, but the reason for that is simple and obvious. You take away the most important thing in someone's life, you must replace it with something of value. Nature cannot and will not accept a vacuum. Alcohol had become the most important thing in my life. When you take that out of my life, I am left with that dark, black, cancerous sense of separation that I started with. If it's not replaced with something of value, I must and will drink, because I am powerless over alcohol, and alcohol is the only thing in my living memory that has ever appeared to heal that unbearable sense of separation. So if it's not replaced with something of value, I will drink. And I believe Alcoholics Anonymous is that something of value that fills that hole and fulfills every need I shall ever have for the rest of my life. So after 30 days, I am stark raving sober, and this inner self makes another decision and gets me to take the necessary action. It decides we must cooperate with this miracle. And I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and asked for help. And the help was instantly and automatically there. Again, simple and obvious, but as I've said, it's the simple and obvious that I can't see. Lots of things I can see except the simple and obvious. But the reason for that is that the answer is in the asking. You cannot have a problem without already having the answer. It is a spiritual impossibility to have a problem without having the answer. However, I still have this belief system of lies that I nurtured to protect my right to drink. So periodically I am unaware of already having what it is I am so desperately looking for. But when I come up to you and say, help me, tell me what to do, I've given up, I've surrendered. And instantly the answer, which is always within me and only within me, nowhere else. There are no answers outside of me for me. The only thing that exists outside of Cubby is an opportunity for Cubby to give everything away. Everything I need is always within me. So when I give up, when I surrender, that answer, which is always within me, can transcend that belief system of lies. And then when you share with me what you did at that point in your sobriety, you make it possible for me to recognize the answer in whatever way I need to stay sober for the next 24 hours. So after 30 days, I asked for help, and I was given the gift of recovery. Now I have a sticky wicket because I'm face-to-face with that three-letter word. And the kindest thing I ever said about God is that it's dog spelled backwards. After my last operation, I was in a coma for 4 days. At some point in that period, I opened my eyes as a chaplain walked in the room, and I stayed conscious long enough, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, just long enough to shake my head no and watch him leave. Because I knew he was there to give me the hocus pocus, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I was determined that if I died, I was going to die giving God the finger. And if there was such a thing called God, I couldn't wait to die so I could meet it, spit in its face, and tell it what I thought of it. Now, I've been told that's an attitude. And the interesting thing is that while this was going on, I was still a teenager. So it's not that years of drinking are responsible for this rotten attitude. It's just that this rotten attitude made years of drinking an absolute necessity, you know. You can't live with an attitude like that if you don't drink or do something, whatever it is. And Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place I know where you can bring an attitude like mine and have it turned into a love affair, not by going to church, not by taking religious instructions or studying theology or dogma, metaphysics or psychology, but by not taking one drink one day at a time and hanging out with a bunch of sober drunks. And that's exactly what happened to me. Now, I don't know what to do about this third step because I still don't know that I want to be sober. I still don't know that I'm an alcoholic. I still am unaware that I have a disease. But again, this inner self is making the decisions and getting me to take the action. So I ask people, how do you take the third step? And it's not until years later I realized that as soon as I asked someone, how do you take the third step, it meant I had already taken the third step. Simple and obvious, but I can't see it, see? That step only asks me to make a decision. So obviously, if I ask you how to do it, I've already made that decision. And then as the book says, it must be followed with a program of vigorous action, meaning the inventory. And that's what I did. I started on my inventory. And after I was maybe halfway through the inventory, I had a feeling that absolutely terrified me. I've never been so terrified by a feeling in my life. And I couldn't make a phone call. I couldn't talk for a couple of hours. Finally, I was able to call my sponsor, and I described this feeling to him. And he said, "You're feeling good." Oh, Christ. So we talked for a while. And then I called my mother in Brooklyn, told her I was sober, and described this feeling. And she laughed. She said, "Don't you know what that is?" I said, "No." She said, "That's peace." Now, I was 41 years old. I had obviously never felt good, never felt at peace, and those feelings were so alien to me that when I finally experienced them, they absolutely terrified me. They paralyzed me with terror. So again, I must be grateful to alcohol, because if this is the state of your being, you need something, and alcohol was the thing that did it for me. The grand illusion. I became something else, and I went somewhere else. An absolute spiritual experience from drinking. So I still don't know that I want to be sober, yet I ask people, how do you take the third step? And then people are talking about prayer. So I don't know what to do about this thing, prayer. So finally what I did is I copied the third step prayer and the St. Francis prayer, and I tacked them on the wall. I wake up in the morning, I'd read these things, go about my business, read them at night, and go to bed. Then it seemed like everyone is saying you have to kneel when you pray. You have to kneel. Gee, this is getting to be quite an order here, man. But I tried it, and this is, in retrospect, it's so amusing, because I obviously desperately wanted to be sober, and I was totally unaware of it. I was so desperate that I actually tried to kneel and pray. 20 and 30 times a day I would try it. And my knees were out to lunch. They wouldn't have anything to do with this idea. Kneel for what? I couldn't do it, and I kept trying. Then when I was sober 4 months, I took the fifth step. And when I finished, my sponsor showed me the pages in the book to read that tell you exactly what to do for 6 and 7. I went home and did as the book suggests. And when I had taken the sixth step, I was made aware of it. Now, I have come to believe that the essence of the sixth step is simply that when there's no longer a payoff in the defect, I am willing to let it go. I am convinced that my entire life I tried to run away from pain by pursuing pleasure, always wondering why I ended up miserable. Again, I can't see the simple and obvious. You can't separate pleasure from pain. They are inseparable. In other words, you can't go into a store and spend just the heads of a quarter. It's one coin. You got to give them the whole Megillah, man. And that's what life, pleasure and pain, the only difference is perception. And I couldn't see these things. I just cannot see it. All I know is I always end up miserable. Now, as an example, I don't hold on to the pain of resentment. But what I will cling to is the pleasure of judgment. And isn't it so great, man, to go home after a meeting? Well, you don't have to wait to go to a meeting. You can do this anytime you want. But there's more opportunities after a meeting. Oh, you're rotten, you son of a bitch. But you go home, I sit in my chair, and I tell God, I go out to lunch, get out of my way, man, because I am so powerful. When I'm alone in my shrunken pumpkin head, I am the most powerful thing in the universe. Ah! And I can just rake you over the coals, whatever it is. Always verbally. Oh, man, am I hip? I'm alone inside my head. Am I hip? Woo! Can't compete with me. And then, if I should wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat all knotted up with pain, I figure, well, I'll just roll out of bed, get on my knees, and hocus pocus God, Oh, God, take my pain. Oh, it hurts. As if God's going to take the pain. Hey, you schmuck, get out of my face. I mean, what a crazy idea. God is going to take away pain. It's absolutely insane, And it never occurs to me that if I just give up the pleasure of judging you, it is impossible to experience the pain of resentment. It's like everybody in their hind legs at some point has a problem with this God of punishment. You know the guy with the whiskers and the garlic on the breath who's always looking over your shoulder, and especially when you're a kid and you're masturbating. Oh, is he rotten, man? Does he keep score? You know what I mean? And then they come out with calculators, and you can't get away from it. He's just always punching the numbers and everything. Nobody needs that. But what I will hold on to is this God of rewards. I stayed sober all day. Where's my reward? You stayed sober because if you don't, you'll die a miserable death. Don't tell me any of your bullshit. Crazy. But if I'm willing to give up the whole concept of rewards, then I can let go of the punishment. If I give up the whole concept of right and wrong, I will never experience the pain of judgment. Absolutely impossible. Well, that's a whole other thing. We don't have time. But anyway. But I can't see these things. But when there's no longer a payoff in a defect, I found that I'm willing to let it go. So when I had taken the 6th step, I was made aware of it. Without thinking, I was on my knees taking the 7th step, and that day I was given a gift of prayer. I've come to believe that the gift of prayer is the most precious thing we're given by whatever this power is that created us. With the gift of prayer, it takes on a living reality in our lives. And I know from my experience as the prayer, there is nothing to get, there is only everything to give. And it's only in the process of giving it away that I become aware of having it in the first place. I also know from my experience as the prayer that I don't pray to God, that there is absolutely nothing to pray to, but I pray from God, and it's all absolutely and totally an inside job. That's not a figure of speech or a metaphor. It's a simple statement of fact. Life is an inside job. I also believe, from my experience, that it's impossible for me to even conceive of praying for something I do not already have. And the more I pray for it, the more I convince myself I don't have it. So for me, what this is a process, this whole process, is one of uncovering the lies of that belief system that I nurtured to protect my right to drink. Uncovering those lies, discarding those lies, and discovering the truth in whatever way it reveals itself to me at any particular moment of my life. And I believe the prayer that mends the broken hearts and heals the sick minds that we all bring to Alcoholics Anonymous is the song of love we sing to this thing called God. I believe that song is heard in every heart throughout the world and is heard throughout the entire universe. And with steps 10 and 11, we can not only sit and hear that song, but experience the simple truth that in all of the universe there is only one song, and we are that song. All of God's kids make up that song, and each and every note is just as important as the other. And obviously that song is in a constant change. Constant change. It cannot be the same because the notes are always changing. So at the 7th step, I was given a gift of prayer. With the 9th step, I was given a gift of love. I had been given up for dead 4 times in a hospital, many times in the streets, and the only thing that kept me alive was what I thought was my hatred for God. And 6 months with you, it turned into a love affair. I didn't understand it at the time, but later I read Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. In the back of that book, they quote an old Spanish philosopher. It's a little line that explained it. It says, "Those who deny God deny him because of their despair at not finding him." First time I read that line, I understood my entire life. I understood every heartbeat, every breath. I understood I was desperately looking for something I wanted more than life itself. And I believed I couldn't have it because I didn't deserve it. I was too evil to have this thing. And it turns out that this thing I so desperately wanted and believed I couldn't have is the only thing I can never be without. I can never be without whatever this form and power of love is that created me.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
An old axiom says, the holiest ground in the world is where an ancient hatred has been turned into a current love. So because of what has happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous, wherever I am standing on the holiest ground in the world. And I believe it is impossible to take the first 9 steps without standing on the holiest ground in the world. I believe it is a predictable and inevitable result of the decisions and actions preceding that step. So with the 12th step, I have this 5th gift, my own personal relationship with whatever this power is that created me. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. It's the only thing we're working towards and for, a spiritual awakening. And among other things, the word spirit means essence. The Latin root is spiritus. It means breath. We're not dealing with some convoluted and involved theological or dogmatic concept here. We're simply dealing with the essence of life, the very breath of life. And the book tells us precisely where we will find it. Deep within ourselves. It is the only place that we will find this great reality. It cannot be found anywhere else, only deep within ourselves. And the more I uncover those lies and discard those lies, the more I discover this great reality deep within myself. Now, obviously, I thought of a spiritual awakening and I'd become God's little sunbeam. I would never say another word in anger. I would never chase you down the street in my automobile into your living room. I just wouldn't do those things anymore. Well, as I said, my drinking was rather problematic. My sobriety's been a million times worse. I mean, I really discover more and more why I had to drink. I am not only a malcontent, I wasn't born to live in this world, and I know that's true. Just, I can't stand it. Anyway, I went bananas. I mean, I battled my demons for many years until I learned to honor them rather than battle them. I had a lot of confusion between defects of character and characteristics of my own personal nature. But it took me a long time to come to terms with this. And anyway, before I finally just made these discoveries, after being together for 15 years, my wife had to leave because she simply couldn't live with me. I'd stay locked in my room 2 or 3 days at a time. No food, no water. I'd try to knock the house down with my head. That's not happy, joyous, and free, man. And you can't live with somebody like that. And I accepted that. I understood that she had to leave because her sobriety and her life was threatened just living with me in the same house. And we both loved each other unconditionally at that moment and still do. But she had to go. We were living in Massachusetts at the time. And our son, who was 12, elected to stay with me. Now, I had been sick for many years. I hadn't worked, I think, in 5 or 6 years. My physical health was totally destroyed. Mental health was not even a fantasy. So we had no money. And Billy and I came back here, stayed with a friend, and I got on welfare, and I found a little 2-room apartment for us. When we moved into that apartment, we had 2 suitcases each. He had an old army cot somebody gave him to sleep on, and I had a piece of foam rubber to sleep on. And that was the extent of our stuff. I was 14 years sober. I was suddenly a single parent on welfare. And to this very moment, I have no idea how I survived those years. I'd get up in the morning, I'd make breakfast for Bill, get him off to school, we'd pray, we'd meditate first, and then he'd go to school, and I'd sit there and cry. I just had no way of coping with the circumstances of my life. Somehow I didn't drink. I went to meetings and did what I could to help drunks, but I just don't know how I survived. And then I experienced the fellowship in a way that I never had before. Because you literally fed us, you clothed us, everything necessary for sustaining life came from the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Until that moment, I used to draw a clear distinction between fellowship and program. I can no longer do that. I can no longer separate you from the program or you from God or you from me. We're either one or we don't exist. One or the other. At Christmas, I didn't know what to do for Billy. It seemed so unfair that a 12-year-old boy wouldn't have a Christmas because of my illness. And what we ended up doing was going down to Skid Row and serving food to the people. And it was one of the greatest days of my life. He was so happy, making sure those kids down there got extra pie and extra milk, that he literally lit up all of Skid Row. And I was overwhelmed with a sense of honor and privilege to be part of such a wonderful being as Billy. He just is an extraordinary man today. I mean, he's really hip. He lives in Brooklyn now. He left L.A. Yeah, he really is. He's marvelous. He starts medical school in September. He's just a wonderful, wonderful being. And that's what we did on Christmas time while we were together. And one day my wife called and said she was in love with someone else. And by that time, there was nothing left inside of me. I couldn't even cry. I was so empty and so hollow. I was so consumed by the agony of a broken heart that I had incredible trouble just speaking. And I was praying for my wife one morning, and something absolutely incredible happened. I heard myself thanking God that she had someone to love, that she had someone to share her life with, to share her body with, to share her program with, and to share her God with. Now, I know that I am not capable of formulating such a prayer, but I don't have to. See, my responsibility is to make the decision to love, and then take the appropriate action. In this case, it was prayer. And this is what I truly believe happened. I believe that your love for me wrote that prayer. You not only wrote that prayer, but you put the words in my heart, so that when my heart broke open, and I could speak those words and experience the results of that prayer, which is to find the love that has always been within me. See, when I got here like everyone else, insulated and isolated in the eye of alcoholism. And I get here, and the very first word of the program is we. We admitted. And instantly, the I of my disease starts to become a part of the we of Alcoholics Anonymous. We admitted. We not only admit each other to these rooms, but we admit each other to our hearts. And the more we continue to practice these principles, in time we experience the one. From I to we to one. The oneness of all life. See, what I found here is not somebody else's concept of God. And it is not some institution's concept of God. And it certainly isn't my concept of God. What I found here is a power of infinite and unconditional love that has revealed itself to me from within me as a direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got here, you did not judge me by the appearance of my illness. You saw beyond the crazed, drunken beast that I believed I was. Beyond that, you saw a sober being. And within that sober being, you saw light, and you saw love. And you held that image of me in your mind as you nurtured me, you loved me, and most importantly of all, you allowed me to make every mistake I must make in order to learn what I need to learn to stay sober for the next 24 hours. And more as I continue to come back to you, I am becoming that image that you have of me, as you are becoming the image that I have of you. And together we are becoming the vision that God has of us. Thank you very much.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.